Well, hey, our city. Good to see you today. Hey, if we haven't met yet, I am not Pastor Chris. My name is Jesse. I'm part of the teaching team here for our city and part of the leadership team, and I'm excited to be here with you today. We're in week 3 of our series called Relationship Goals, and for those of you who are tuning in online, watching the YouTube channel, I want to say a big welcome to you guys, and also to the podcast listeners. Hey. I met somebody in first service named Ricky. So Ricky, if you're doing what I asked and you're going back to week 2 and week 1 and listening to it, good job. This recording is just for you. We love you. You're awesome. Well done. Hey, to the rest of us in the room, I want to remind you that we are in this awesome relationship series. And this is a series for you, even if you're not in a relationship. But maybe one day you want to be. Maybe you are about to start dating. Maybe you've been dating for a little while. Maybe you're down the dating road and you're like in a committed relationship. Maybe you're even married or you've been married. There's something within this series for every single one of us in the room today. Because here's the truth. Every single one of us are going to be, want to be, somehow are affected by long-term committed relationships. And in relationship goals, we're just trying to figure out, man, how can we be a little bit better in those relationships? How can we be a little bit healthier? How can we mature in the way that we navigate all those different relationships? And Pastor Chris has been doing a phenomenal job of leading us through this series so far. Week 1, he took a whole bunch of myths that we've believed about relationships, and he just busted them one by one, broke them apart, demolished them. And then last week, he went into this chapter in Corinthians and talked through like what love actually looks like. So week 1, it was this new kind of love that Jesus wanted us to express to each other. And then Paul breaks it apart and he says, hey, this is what that new kind of love actually looks like. And we had some homework last week. I know, you're adults. It's like, oh, no. We're supposed to have homework. But yes, in fact, we did have homework. We were supposed to memorize this verse. And I'm not going to check your work, okay? We're going to read it together. Let's go ahead and get that verse up on the screen. It's 1 Corinthians 13:4, and it said this: love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. The next verse says, it does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. And so if you've been navigating relationships and trying to figure out what love looks like, that is a clear depiction of how you should be receiving and how you should be expressing love. And anything opposed to that is not a clear representation of what love is meant to look like. And I'm excited to share a little bit more on this topic. We're going to go into that chunk of scripture. So if you brought your Bibles today, you can go ahead and open them up to 1 Corinthians 13. We're going to stay in there for a while. But I'm excited to share on this topic because I am myself a newlywed. I've been married for almost 5 months now. That's right. Feeling pretty good. So I'd love to show you guys a picture of myself, my beautiful wife. So this is us right when we got engaged. My wife, Bridget. She's the best. So that's right after we got engaged, still in the glow of the surprise and delight and everything of it. And then the next picture is after our wedding day. The picture never gets old. I just love it. I love her. She is a dream come true. She is the depiction of an active prayer life. So I'm excited. She is wonderful. And so obviously, being 5 months married, right, almost 5 months now, I have a new mastery of the topic of marriage. And I am excited to share with you everything that I've learned when it comes to this topic of marriage. You're laughing because you know it's not true. And you know those young bucks who try to come up and be like, oh, I just got married. I'm going to write a book and sell it and be like, yeah, this is how you're supposed to have a healthy marriage. So maybe I can't teach you. My wife and I, we don't have that much experience in the marriage game. But let me tell you, we have badges of honor for surviving the treacherous waters of the dating ocean. And that thing is dangerous. There are great white sharks all over that thing. You got to watch out, right? And the only way that we were able to navigate it is because we got community around us. Individually, we didn't even meet each other yet. And individually, we decided in our lives, we didn't say it this way, but for today's context, we're going to say it this way. She and I both decided when we looked at the relationships around us that we figured out, man, if we don't want a relationship like the broken relationships we see in our everyday lives, we got to date in a different way than that. We can't continue to date like these people are dating because that's the result you're going to get out of that dating method. So we got to find a new way to do it. And so both of us went to work on ourselves and tried to figure out, man, what does it look like to date in a new way? What does it look like to date in a way that would express those truths that we just read in 1 Corinthians? And so I want to share that with you. And for those of you in the room who are thinking ahead, you're like, oh man, we got a whole message about dating, but like, I'm in a committed relationship, or I'm married, or I've been there, I've done that. Let me just tell you, here's how I know this message is for you and for me today. A couple months ago, my wife, we've been a few months married now, she asked me, she's like, hey babe, I'm just wondering, like, you haven't really planned any dates recently like you used to when we were dating. I was wondering when we're going to get back to that. And I like instantly had so many excuses like, well, but this and And ultimately I was like, babe, you're right. You're right. Like I have taken a backseat ride to this relationship because we got married. So what else is there to do? It's the finish line. We're done. Yeah. And the marriages in the room are busted up laughing because you already know. Here's the truth that I've learned from the wise marriages in the room, from the books that I've read, from the podcast, all the different resources, from Pastor Chris's incredible messages about relationships. Here's what I've learned about relationships. Just because you got somebody to say I do doesn't mean you can stop doing the things that got you there. In your relationships, you have to keep doing the practices that you started with. You were starting just to build the connection, build the intimacy, build the interaction, build the relationship that was there, but you can't stop because they said I do. It's like, gotcha, now we're good. You can't leave. Now, statistically, we know that's not the case. You actually can leave even after you say I do. So we have to continue maintaining this allure in this relationship. And to those of you who are in the room who are mature married, like you've been down the road, we need you to win at this, okay? My wife and I, every young married, every young dating in this room, we absolutely need you to crush it when it comes to winning at marriage because we're watching you. You are our hope, right? We are watching you just saying like, man, I just want to be like, fill in whatever the last name is of the marriage that you respect the most. Like, to be like, I want to, early in my own life, I felt like I was crushing it at life, all right? So I had my dream job. I was paying off all my debt. I was almost debt-free following the Dave Ramsey plan. I had my dream car. Like, I was about to start shopping for a house. Like, so many of those adult, tick boxes. Like, yeah, I'm killing the adulting game, right? So good. I haven't even paid a bill late. Like, I am winning. Except when it came to the realm of relationships. And in my own relational life, though I was adulting in so many ways, I was still so childish in the way that I navigated dating and relationships. And so I had to actually go and ask my pastor, Chris Harrell, I'm like, hey, I just don't know why it's not working. Like, I'm awesome. Why can't I find her? Where's she at? And he gave me this challenge, right? He said, okay, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take everything you've ever dreamed of your perfect woman, like that perfect significant other. Take everything you've ever hoped, dreamed, prayed for, thought she could be, it would look like, and here's what, and all of it, and go write that down, and then come back to me. I'm like, okay, cool, awesome. I went and got a college-ruled notebook, and I just filled that thing up. 3 pages of notes, got that thing good to go, brought him back. I was like, there you go. There she is. I know where you're about to take me, right? When you pray specifically, you get specific answers to prayer. I know this is going to happen, right? Here it is. And he just slid it back without even reading it. And he said, here's the question I want to ask you. Are you the man that woman would be looking for? You're looking for somebody right now in your life. Would she be looking for you? Are you quality enough to match what your idealized list of that person is? And my pastor loves me enough to be like, boy, you need to step it up because you're trying to date out of your league right now. You need to go put dating off the shelf and go work on yourself. And I had to go to work. And literally, I said it earlier, I went to the top 5 marriages that I respected, and I just asked them out to dinner, and I'm just like, hey, I want to buy you food, and I want you to tell me everything you learned about marriage and relationship. Tell me whatever books I need to read. Tell me the podcasts I need to listen to. Every time Pastor Chris taught on relationships, I'd podcast that thing like 3 or 4 times after he preached it, and I went to work on this thing. And those of you who are married and down the road and you've been crushing it, you're the reason why, like, I'm up here today as a married man able to talk about this topic of dating. But I want to tell you that just because you're beyond that point doesn't mean you're beyond it, because we need to continue on in those vital areas of our relationship. We need to continue to have that vibrancy and that youthful passion. There's a couple who is in their 70s. After first service, I preached this message. In their 70s, they came up to me and said, man, that was an incredible message. Like, I need to go. The man said, I need to go, like, start dating my wife again. They've been married, and all the men are like, dang it. I got to go plan something? Man. We need you to win at this. And if you haven't been winning at it, no matter where you're at on the relationship spectrum, today's message is for you so that you could actually have hope for tomorrow, so you can go into your relationships and you can begin to navigate them in a healthier way. I want to read you a couple different quotes about relationships just to bring us up to speed together. Because maybe you've been dating for a little while and you just think your problems are your own and you're like in a silo and you're too nervous to talk about it with other people. Maybe you've been married, you haven't dated for a while. Here's what dating looks like in modern culture. Here we go. This guy Benjamin, he says this: online dating is the worst. Each time I ask friends ranging from early 20s to their 40s how the temperature in the dating pool is, I'm met with borderline hostility. For all the talk and the ease that dating apps allow for potential date, the impression I'm left with is everyone is swimming in a pool they all took a dump in. Instead of getting out of the pool and shocking the water back to health, everybody decided they need to keep swimming in the sewage, perhaps even adding to it, because that's the pool where people swim. Do you hear the hopelessness in that? Well, I mean, I guess I got to swim in the sewer water because that's it, right? That's the only place. Another person says, I saw a meme once that read, it used to be, how long do we date before we have sex? Now it's, how long do we have sex before we date? The hopelessness of like, okay, I'm going to give you like the most intimate part of me, but when do we actually get commitment in a relationship? When do I expect that out of this exchange? Another person said, we don't communicate our feelings to one another, but instead we play this guessing game with no intention of being with that person long term, because it means you care and you're weak. Because whoever cares the least in the relationship, they win, right? It's a posture of defense of like, okay, as long as I don't care, I will never get heartbroken. I can never get hurt. And so today, I want to walk us into that realm, wherever we're at, and I want to navigate. What does it look like to take those biblical truths that we learned last week? Love is patient, love is kind, all those elements. That makes sense in a committed long-term relationship, but how do you express that when you're dating somebody? And I think Paul, a little bit later on, he has the wisdom for us. And he says this, after he gave that love address, a little bit later on in 1 Corinthians 13:11, he says this: when I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, and I reasoned like a child. But when I became a man, when I became a woman, when I became an adult, I put the ways of childhood behind me. And that's what I want to challenge us to do today. No matter where you're at, relationally speaking, if you have been thinking like a child, reasoning like a child, acting like a child, don't elbow your neighbor, if that's where you've been camping out, today, the challenge for us as adults is to put away the childish ways, relationally speaking, that we've been living in. Because in so many ways, I think we could all agree that dating is complicated. It is complicated. That might be an oversimplification, but at the same time, when you think about it, whenever you give really complicated things to a child, they're not going to know what to do with it. Right? Have you ever put a kid behind the seat of a car and you're like, hey, drive straight? What do? Just I'm driving straight. Look at me. This is how you go straight. Driving's complicated. You're not going to put a toddler behind the driver's seat of a car and expect them to succeed at that thing. And in the same way, so many of us, man, we are acting childish in the way that we're driving the relationship car in our life. And the challenge today is to step up and to mature out of that thing. So here's what we want to do. We want to change the way that we approach romance, sexual attraction, relationships. We want to make that thing a little bit less complicated. We want to simplify it. And in doing so, we want to mature it and we want to step up our game. Because here's the truth. Many of us would describe a child this way, and even more of us would describe our last date this way. Children and our last date are naturally impatient, easily angered, self-seeking, easily distracted, self-centered, ill-mannered, selfish, and rude. But that's the experience. So let's mature that thing. Let's grow up. And let's, as Paul gave us the challenge, let's put the ways of childhood behind us. And so today, this is not going to be a message that ends with like, hey, I just want you to kiss dating goodbye. Like, no, that's not where we're going at all. I actually encourage dating. I think that dating in a healthy, like intentional way is the best thing in the world because you're going to get experiences and you're going to understand new things about yourself and what you're looking for and who you're looking for, and all the stuff in you, like in your heart, is going to be trudged up to the surface, and you're going to have to come face to face with the dating monster that you are, that I was, that I sometimes still am. We want to mature out of those things. But here's what I know. Some of you are approaching dating with the old adage that practice makes perfect. Like, oh, the more I date, oh, it's going to be awesome. No, unless you practice the right way, it doesn't really matter. All your practice is just going to end you up in an imperfect relationship that's broken and helpless. You have to practice dating the right way, intentionally, to be able to mature yourself and grow into this new way of doing it. So how do we mature our thoughts, our emotions, our actions? How do we do this? How do we grow up in the realm of our relationships? Actual dating it's exercise for you. It's practice, it's rehearsal. It requires something of us. It's preparation, it's risky. It makes you like do things that you wouldn't otherwise choose to do for yourself because it's uncomfortable. It surfaces our worst fears and our worst insecurities. When you have to sit across from another person and try to have a dialogue with them, like, man, that can be so scary. No wonder we so often avoid it and look for the easy out. Dating requires us to exercise our courage muscle. It requires us to exercise our self-control muscle. It requires us to exercise our honor the other person muscle. It requires us, hey, men in the room, it requires us to exercise our plan muscle. You got to come up with a plan and organize that thing and make it happen. So at the bottom line, at the end of today, here's what I want you to walk away with. If you forget everything else I'm about to say, here's the big point. If you don't want a relationship like the majority of relationships around you, then you can't date like the majority of people dating around you. You got to do something else. Week 1, Pastor Chris said, hey, if you want to do different, you got to be different. You want to be different, you got to do different. That's the principle that we're walking into today. If you don't want a relationship like the people around you, stop going to them for advice. You have to approach dating in a different way. If you want a healthy marriage, if you want a healthy relationship, and you're unsatisfied with where you're at, guess what? You need to try something. You need to try a new approach in that relationship. And maybe, just maybe, if we were to try this approach of what love looks like, we would get to have a different experience. So as I navigated the dating scene as a young buck trying to figure all this stuff out, thankfully Pastor Chris helped me navigate through that stuff and that moment in my life. Through that time, I was able to come up with a couple different guidelines and boundaries to keep myself on the right track as I was dating and navigating that treacherous water. And here's the first thing that I want to tell you today, all right? When it comes to dating, the very first thing, guys in the room talking to you, ladies, you can check out for just a moment. This isn't for you. You're not even interested. It's cool. Guys, you have to ask girls on dates. You have to actually ask them out on a date, right? No more of this like, hey, you want to hang out? Hey, I was thinking if you want to do you want to go get some coffee sometime? Or Like, what? How lazy? You got to like get out in front of yourself and be courageous. Why is it that modern dating either sounds like you are talking with somebody like at the playground in grade school, or you're at a networking event and you got to like exchange LinkedIn's and like connect. I'd really be interested in connecting and just seeing what kind of ventures are in our future together. What? Men, you have to ask women on dates. Use that word. Be clear with your intentions of what you're trying to accomplish, all right? I'm gonna tell on myself a little bit, all right? I'm gonna tell a little bit of Bridget and I's dating story, okay? So when I did not do this the first time that I asked her out, okay? So we met in church, and it was like during kind of the like minute mingle like time when you like chit chat. We were talking a little bit, like the gym came up, and I was just like, oh, here's my chance, all right? I'm like, oh, your gym sounds really cool. I'd love to check it out sometime. And passive, insecure me wanted her to do the hard work of saying, oh, yeah, it is awesome. Why don't you come with me? Like, that's what I wanted out of that exchange. Do you know what she did? She said, oh, you should go online. All the classes are listed. You can go pick whatever you want. Oh, okay, I'm not dealing with a girl here. I got a woman on my hands. Okay, all right. I got to approach this a little differently. And so after a few more weeks of getting my courage back up, it was after church. Most of the room had already left. We were chit-chatting. She'd just been on a trip and came back, and we were talking about it. And I walked her out of the room. We were about to go into the plaza, and I knew, I'm like, okay, I have right until we hit those doors before she sees all her friends and there's all the people and all this craziness, and I'm going to lose my chance. So I got to do this now. So I stopped her like right in the lobby area, and I grabbed her hands. I was just like, hey, this might be a little bit forward, but I'd like to get to know you outside of church. Would you like to go on a date with me? Aw, thanks. I was clear and I was specific. And you know what, man? She said yes. She said yes. And then I had to ask her for a number. I was like, I guess I should probably get your number, right? Like, I think that's an actual quote of what I said. Because it's just like, man, as a 33-year-old man, a 32-year-old woman, how do you do this like dating thing? You still feel like kids, but we're trying to mature that, right? We're trying to behave in a different way. And so I got her number, and everybody in the room is already thinking like, wait, did you wait the prescribed 36 hours before texting her? You can't seem too desperate. I texted her that night. It was like 2 hours later. Spent like 30 minutes cultivating the perfect 5-word text message. To use an emoji, nah, that's too, no emoji. And I just told her, I was like, hey, it was great. Like, I'm so glad that we talked tonight. I would love to take you out. Thanks for trusting me with your number. Like, we set up a date for the next Friday, and we went out on that date, and it was awesome. It was awesome. And here's the kicker. So this leads us into the second boundary, right? So women in the room. Men, you can check out for a second. Women in the room, right? You have to go out on dates. You got to actually go on dates. And there's two sides of it, right? I know some of you are just like, I'm nervous about the whole thing. I feel like if I go on one date, it's going to turn into like a committed relationship. And I'm not ready to get married yet. It's just too much. And some of us are just like, some of the women in the room, it's like, I don't want to date him, and you probably shouldn't be dating him, and that's fine. You can tell him no. That guy's... But for goodness sakes, please don't agree to any more hangouts. Don't agree to go connect with him. If he asks you, hey, do you want to go hang out sometime? You come correct, and you say, oh, do you have anything in mind? You challenge that. See, here's the dirty little secret about men, right? Most men, there's a handful of men who have mastered this, but for most men, if we don't have to, we won't. We're real good at keeping the status quo of where things are at, unless there is a challenge that is enticing enough for us to get out of our own way and go express something new and different. I had the opportunity to continue the status quo of trying to get Bridget to ask me out until she put that challenge up. I'm like, oh no, okay, I gotta mature, I gotta grow, I gotta go talk to my pastor, I gotta go figure out how to make this thing happen. So women, agree to dates. Don't agree to hangouts. And don't overcomplicate it. Go enjoy a date. Because when you apply these healthy boundaries in dating, you don't have to worry about it crossing any lines or turning into something you don't want to turn into. Just put these healthy boundaries in place. The next one I would say is don't ever mistreat anyone, even if they don't seem to mind being mistreated. Just don't do it. Don't ever mistreat anybody in a dating relationship, in a marriage relationship, in any kind of family relationship. Don't mistreat anybody, even if they don't seem to mind being mistreated. Because here's the truth. When you and another adult get into a relationship, you are bringing your past experiences in with you. And we will settle to the lowest possible level of relationship that we're allowed. And so when he or when she brings in their broken past of abuse and neglect and shame and all the things that they experienced because of their past relationship, you're going to have the opportunity to operate in the same way because they're used to accepting it. And I would say this, as a Jesus follower specifically, you are not allowed to go there. You're actually called to a much higher standard. You're called to express love the way that Jesus depicted it for us. Because you're saying you want to follow in the steps of Jesus, you need to operate that way. And if you're not a Jesus follower in the room, that's fine. You don't need to hit that high bar. But socially, don't be a jerk. You're not allowed to stoop to the level that person, they may not even seem to mind you stooping to that level. Don't mistreat people. And one of the ways that I expressed this in my own journey, kind of navigating dating, one of the ways I expressed it is I came up with this, it's a dumb rule. And rules help me though, so I had to come up with a strategy of how to do this thing because I would find myself being in a relationship way longer than I should be in the relationship. Have you ever found yourself in that place where you are sacrificing a really good, incredible, intimate relationship just for proximity with another human being? We sacrifice genuine intimacy just because there's a filler here. And it's it's not so bad. At least I can watch Netflix with them. It is bad because you're not available to the person that could actually be filling that space in an incredible way. So I came up with this rule for myself to help myself. I had the 3-date rule. The 3-date rule for me was by the 3rd date, I had to make a decision of if I was going to continue to date this person or not. I was mature and adult enough to know what I was looking for. And 3 dates for me, hey, it's got to be what it is. And that helped me and it helped her have clarity in the relationship. The way that I continue to express clarity, because here's the kicker. Clarity is so kind and honoring to the other person that you are dating, that you're in a relationship with. Clarity is a gift that you give each other, right? And we don't always like to hear clarity. And so I might actually hurt somebody's feelings by being honest with them. That's okay. What's not okay is for me to avoid hurting somebody's feelings because I don't want to feel the discomfort of having that conversation. That's passive and gross and immature. It's childish. And today we are putting the ways of childhood behind us, right? We're stepping into this new place of being. And so even when I started to date Bridget, every so often when we were on our date, we'd end the date and I'd walk her to her door. And every so often, not every night because that'd be weird, but every so often, I did a lot of weird stuff, but this was awesome, okay? I would just let her know where we were at, where I was at. And it would go something like this. I'm like, hey, Bridget, I'm really enjoying dating you. And as long as you're okay with it, I intend to keep taking you on dates. And it was this gift of clarity. And she would reciprocate, yeah, I'm having a good time as well. I would like you to continue dating me. Right? It sounds so simple, right? But how mature is that you would actually meet each other as adults with respect and clarity? What does it look like in your marriage to meet each other with respect and clarity? What are the things that go unsaid? What are the unspoken things that you actually need to get away from yourself trying to avoid discomfort and you need to bring to that other person and shed some light on and bring some clarity to? The flip side of this, the first one is don't ever mistreat anybody. The second one is don't allow yourself to be mistreated. This is the 4th boundary that I had as I navigated the dating ocean. Don't allow yourself to be mistreated. It's not worth it. And here's how you know if it's mistreatment, because sometimes it's hard to navigate what this thing looks like. If you would be furious with anybody mistreating your sister or your brother or your aunt or your uncle or your nephew or your nieces or your single mom or your single dad, if you would be furious with somebody treating them the way that you're being treated, you know that you're being mistreated, and it's time to cut ties. Because here's the dirty truth about mistreatment. If you allow yourself to be mistreated, that becomes a pattern of behavior. And that will become a new mental and emotional normal that you will operate in. And so you'll go from operating here to operating here real soon. And then you will think, this is how I'm supposed to be treated. This is how I deserve to be treated. This is all that I deserve from a relationship. I'll never get back up here because I'm not worthy. I'm not worth it. And that's just not true. And men and women in the room, so often we get in these conversations, especially in life groups, and I've had dialogue with many of you, and you're just like, man, but I love him. I love her. Have you seen us on Instagram? It just looks so good. If you are being mistreated, you need to end the relationship because it's not a real relationship anyway. You're not experiencing genuine love. And if you're confused about what love looks like, I would challenge you again, go back and read 1 Corinthians 13. Go listen to last week's message, and Pastor Chris will outline for you. Here's what mature love is supposed to look like. And then I want you to hold your relationship up to that and say, am I experiencing this? Maybe it's time that I liberate myself from this relationship. Don't ever allow yourself to be mistreated and set that sick new normal. And the final one is this. Boundary number 5, don't do anything that makes you a liar for life. And this is a hard one, right? It's difficult because we don't think about this idea of writing a story with our relationships and with our lives. We just think of going from date to date, event to event, experience to experience, encounter to encounter. It's like, it doesn't matter what happened last summer. It doesn't matter what's going to happen next Friday. It doesn't matter what happened with that experience over there. It's just a one-time event, and I'm going to go find somebody else. And it's okay if I behave this way for now, because eventually when he comes along or when she comes along, then I'll behave differently, because then they'll be the one that it's meant to be. That's so not true. Every relationship, every experience, every encounter that you have with somebody, it's being journaled in the story of your life. And one day, you're going to meet somebody who you want to go the long haul with. And what's going to happen as you grow closer and closer, and eventually you cross the line and you become in a committed relationship, and eventually maybe you get married, you're going to exchange books, storybooks of each other's lives for each other to look at. And you're going to be tempted when the question comes up to avoid talking about that one summer, to avoid disclosing that one. Hey, why do you follow that person? I don't know. I've just followed him for a while. You're going to be tempted to lie, to hide. And you're not a liar, unless you are. Are you a liar? I don't think so. So don't do anything that makes you a liar for life. You're telling a story with your relationship now that is it has the opportunity to be so incredible. And I know right now this can sound so terrible because I'm standing above you, and it could sound like I'm just preaching down like, oh, you're terrible, don't do it. That's not it at all. Today, I want to provide an opportunity for you to make a pivot in your relationships. Because here's the deal. A really, 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 really good relationship story could sound like, I used to behave this way and do these things and engage in these activities, and here's where and meet them here and go there. But one day I heard a message. One day I was inspired to change. One day I had an opportunity to shift. One day I had an opportunity to grow in the way that I navigated relationships. And it was never the same. I had the opportunity to take the storybook of my life and flip the page and start new. And it's so easy to be tempted to flip that thing back and keep writing the same story, right? But you need to have good community around you. You need to have a good church around you. You need to have good resources around you to help encourage you. Stay on the new blank page and write a new story. You have the opportunity to do that. There's no shame. There's no guilt. There's nothing about what's past. I am encouraging you for Monday. This is a message for the future. It's not about the past. It's about what you do tomorrow and Tuesday and next Friday and next Saturday. It's about your behavior for the future and how you want to tell that story. And my wife and I love our story. My wife and I, on October 5th, we were able to hold each other's hands and exchange vows to each other on our wedding day. And as we gave the storybooks of each other's lives to each other, we realized that we had been pursuing the same thing for so long. That here was the woman that I had actually fought so hard to keep these boundaries up in my life so that I would be the man that she deserves. And she had done the same thing, that she would be the woman that I deserved. And that we were there together. Here's what's incredible, guys. We found out that we both saved ourselves for each other for marriage. Like, we were virgins when we got married. And that is a rare thing in today's world. I don't know how we survived navigating modern culture. But we had community, and we had pastors, and we had leaders, and we had family. And early on, we decided that if we didn't want a relationship like the majority, that we would not date like the majority. And so here's the opportunity for every one of us today, no matter where you're at. Again, if you're single, if you're dating, if you're newlyweds, if you're married, if you've been married, wherever you're at today, there's an opportunity for you to mature in the way that you navigate your relationships. Gosh, if you're parents in the room, we need you to model this to your kids. You have to model what healthy dating relationships look like to those little kids in your home that are knuckleheads that you don't think are ever watching, but they're watching everything you do. Doesn't matter what you say, they're watching what you do. And we need you guys to win at this. And here's what I know is true of this room right now, because I'm so often in that seat. I know that there's a voice speaking to you right now. I believe that's the voice of Jesus, that he's speaking to your heart, to your mind. He's bringing up the idea that you need most to mature in your own life. How can we, as Paul suggested, how can we take our childish thinking, our childish behavior, our childish action, how can we put the things, relationally speaking, of childhood behind us and step into every relationship that we experience as a mature adult? No more boys and girls, but men and women navigating this relational environment in a healthy, respectful way. What does that look like? And maybe you're still a skeptic in the room and you're just like, yeah, that's awesome. You're a pastor and you got married. And of course, that's how it goes for pastors. And that's just what it is, right? Here's my challenge to you. If you're still like on the fence, like, it's just, you don't understand what it's like to date, okay? I've only been married 5 months. I do know what it's like to date, first of all. Second of all, here's what I want you to do. I want you, this weekend, when you go home, I want you to take a box. Get a box. If you don't have a box at your house, in the next couple of days, Amazon will deliver you a brand new box. It'll be beautiful. Take whatever's in there, get it out. Take an empty box, and I want you to sit across from this box alone. Nobody around, just from this box. And I want you to consider all the good things. I want you to consider all the good things that your way of dating, of hookups, of apps, of encounters, of experiences, of being treated, of treating others. I want you to consider all the good, beneficial things that you've experienced from your way of doing it. And I want you to fill up that box to overflowing. Maybe some of us in the room could come up with a good thing because we really wanted to not have an empty box. But I think most of us would have a pretty empty box. So here's the challenge today. If your way is not good for you, maybe get rid of that box and maybe try something new. Maybe today is your day to try something new. Let's do that together. Would you pray with me? Jesus.